I'm not a fan of season 8. I think that season 8 was a real whimper to end on for the show. I think this is an almost borderline betrayal to what the show stands for.
Obviously, this particular comment didn't age too well.
So, a few days ago, we had the series finale of Arrow air, which means that I have to come out of my little, I guess, slump in terms of making content, because it's been a very long time since I last made a video. And yeah, since it's Arrow, it's the series finale, it's a show that I've talked about to no end on this channel. It would only be right for me to come out finally out of my hidey hole and review this series finale for the whole show. Yeah, I've held off on doing this one for a while because I wanted to basically cement my feelings on the episode before I got into doing an actual review. And the main reason for that was just simply because, you know, I had a lot of thoughts coming out of it, things that I liked, things that I didn't like. Yeah, it was very, very mixed overall. A lot of my friends have had very differing opinions on this, especially a certain Mr. Declan McKinney, who is acting at the moment like it's the worst thing known to mankind, but I know that secretly because he loves this show to bits. So, more importantly, what did I think of it? Well, I thought it was a good finale. It was a good series finale. Not a great one. Nothing along like the tiers of like the Banshee series finale or the Breaking Bad series finale or 6 Feet Under series finale, like those kind of like real proper 10 out of 10 finales that are virtually, in my opinion, perfect. It's not like that, but I didn't expect that going in, because when you have a show like Arrow, which is it's a show in of itself, but it's also part of this wider, already established universe, it's very difficult to wrap up things with a nice bow when you've also know the fact that these characters will all still exist within this universe where you've got all these other shows happening, and, you know, it's like, well, where are these characters? Where are these other characters? Why can't they pop up on another show? So you have that problem as well. So I didn't expect this finale to be pitch perfect. I would be shocked if it was, but I didn't go in with those expectations. So that's probably why I'm not as disappointed as other people. But I still enjoyed it for the most part. And yeah, let's just get talking on the different subjects that I want to talk about regards to this finale. I'll start off with the positives first, like I always do. Before I go into that, actually, I'll quickly just give my brief opinion on Season 8 as a whole, because I've actually not talked about Season 8 at all on this channel yet. I am going to do a review for the whole season sometime coming up. I just need time to rewatch the entire season before I really start into making that review, because it's only 10 episodes long, so I kind of can afford to do a rewatch before I do my full review for the season. But overall, Season 8 for me has been very strong. It was a very, very strong season. Not as good as Season 1 or 2. I think if it had a 23 or 22 episode arc, like stretched out to that episode count, I think it honestly could have rivaled Season 5. But because of how short it is, and because of the fact that it's had to set up Crisis, and I do feel like with the negatives for this season, with the fact that obviously I just felt there was a bit too much leaning into setting up the Green Arrow and the Canary spin-off, the fact that the Flash Forwards returned, and I didn't particularly like them for the first 3 episodes. Some characters I felt got less screen time than I would have hoped for. Issues like that for me, that they kind of hold it back from being as good as Season 5, but in terms of a season overall, I loved Season 8. It was a very good season, a very strong season to close out the show with. And yeah, I won't give too many indications as to where it's going to go onto my ranking, because I will be doing that in a video upcoming, and hopefully we'll be talking about it on my podcast, so stay tuned for that. But yeah, I enjoy Season 8 as a whole. Very good season, very strong season to end the show on. With those quick thoughts of Season 8 out of the way, let's just get straight into the finale. So the first positive I want to talk about is I liked a lot, and by a lot I mean most of, the endings for the characters that we got in this episode. From what I can remember off the top of my head, I'll just go on the ones that I've got down on this list. Roy and Thea basically get engaged by the end of the episode. I really liked that, because the whole show has basically played around with Roy and Thea as will they, won't they. I really like their relationship. And obviously, you know, they were a really strong couple in Season 2 and Season 3, and obviously Colton Haynes had a few personal issues, so he stepped back from the show. They had to kind of pull away from that relationship. But I really liked this ending for their characters, and it felt like the logical conclusion. for where they needed to go. I would have maybe liked a little bit more screen time with them, but in terms of what they did with them, with the time they had in the episode, I think they did a really good job, and they ended them in a very nice, concrete place, showing that obviously they're committing to each other and they, end up together, which is, for me, the best way that both those characters could have been written out the show. Diggle got a really good ending in this as well. He has a really big role in this episode, which plays me a lot because I think Diggle has been good this season, but I do agree with people saying that he has felt a bit shortchanged at times. Like, we haven't had as much of him as we had in previous seasons. Again, you are going to naturally expect that when you've only got 10 episodes of this season compared to the 22 to 23. But I enjoyed him in this episode, and I really thought it was fitting that he was the person who gave the speech at Oliver's burial. It felt fitting to me because he's been there since the beginning. He's been by Oliver's side. He was the first person to join Team Arrow. He's been by Oliver's side for so long. It felt right to have him be the one to say that speech at his funeral. We know, obviously, him and his family are moving to Metropolis, so he could potentially appear in other shows. We will see. And I really like the tease that they left on as well with the Green Lantern, with the mysterious green glowing box, which we all know contains a Green Lantern ring. They just obviously couldn't show it. But I really like that because it gives that finality to that character, but it also leaves a bit of the door open to maybe exploring stuff in the future. Will we see anything of that? I don't know. But I liked where they ended Diggle off in this episode. I thought that was really cool. Dinah as well, I actually quite liked. I was kind of concerned what they're going to do with Dinah because obviously they've established things with her character in the spin-off for things that take place after this episode. But I feel like what they do with the episode in and of itself, they did a really good job of ending off her character so that if that spin-off were to not get picked up, they still end her character in the good place. She she goes out, riding off into the sunset. It's kind of like an old Western thing where the cowboy just goes off into the sunset. That's what Dinah does. She leaves the police force and she leaves Star City. It gives that finality to her, but obviously if the spin-off gets picked up, it'll also give them the chance to kind of show what happens in between that time frame and how she ends up in the future. So I like that, and I like what they did with her character there. I like what they did with Laurel, her kind of, accepting this reality, and because they did this short arc in the episode where she's kind of doubting why Earth 1 Laurel wasn't brought back when Oliver brought back everyone and, obviously made changes to this new universe that he created and why he didn't bring back Earth 1 Laurel. And she has that great scene with Quentin where he says, there was nothing about you that needed fixing. And that was a really good scene of itself. Again, I would have liked to have a bit more in this episode, but again, I feel like it's because they want to obviously give her some sense of closure, but obviously leave the door open for the spin-off. And we also, of course, get Renee, who becomes the mayor of Star City, because Quentin steps down in this episode as the mayor, and Renee takes it up, so that kind of fulfills that storyline that we obviously had set up in Season 7 in the flash forwards. Renee's another character that I think got really shortchanged this season. We didn't really get a lot with him. Rick Gonzalez was like, oh, you're going to get this big storyline with Renee as the mayor. We didn't really see that. We saw it for about 3 episodes, and it felt a little bit rushed. But I liked, obviously, the fact they end off his character in there. So, again, the potential he could appear in the spin-off, but this obviously gives his character a sense of closure regardless. I also really liked Felicity in this episode, which is strange coming from me because I'm one of the people that's really critical of her as a character, but I thought she was quite good in this episode, I'm not going to lie. I thought she was quite good because they didn't overuse her. She didn't become overbearing in this episode. She was there in addition to the other characters, and I, strangely enough, liked the ending that she had with Oliver. The fact that obviously we got to see what happened at the end of Season 7 when she went off with the Monitor. She goes to the afterlife to see Oliver and to spend the rest of her afterlife with him, for lack of a better word. But I did like that. I did like that finale because it felt right for those characters to be together. Kind of like this bittersweet but happy note. Obviously they're together, they're in the afterlife, but they can have a peaceful life together in the afterlife. And also because they kill off Felicity, which is obviously something I've been kind of secretly wanting in the back of my mind since Season 4, because I still have not forgiven her character for the god-awful train wreck that was that season. So I guess that's kind of a little bit of justice towards me. But I did like how they used her in this episode. I thought she was very good for the most part. I think the best thing in this whole episode, though, and I don't think anybody will doubt this, was the flashbacks in this episode, because they were absolutely awesome. And it felt right to have them because this is the series finale. We're kind of calling back all the way to the beginning of the show, with the flashbacks taking place in Season 1, and obviously the flashbacks were such a big part of the first 5 years of Arrow. So I really liked them, including that in this finale, and they were awesome. Taking place whilst Oliver and Diggle were working together, and I thought the way they relate to the story in the current day was okay, not the greatest, but the actual flashbacks themselves were so good because it was just prime season 1, like Oliver literally going on, taking groups of people, killing them, which only really became apparent to me when they have that massive long action sequence. I'll get to that in a bit, but I was watching that, I was like, oh yeah, he's killing people. It was just really cool just to flash back to the beginning when we're at the show's end. It was just really nice to see. But that action sequence in the flashbacks, that might be one of the best action sequences on Arrow ever. That was awesome. I mean, when you've got James Bamford doing your episode, who's been the stunt coordinator since the beginning, you kind of expect that, but it was just amazing. The amount of long takes that they got and stuntmen in the camera and the stuff they were able to do, it was absolutely awesome. It was just a brilliant sequence, and you could tell obviously the stunt crew wanted to end, do their last big action sequence with a bang, and they absolutely did that. It was a brilliant sequence to watch. Yeah, and like I said, one of my favourite action sequences on Arrow ever. Not quite the best, but it's certainly up there. It's definitely up there, like with the top tier Arrow fight sequences. And lastly, on the positives upside, I want to talk about the cameos, because obviously we got a lot of people coming back for this episode. Obviously you had Tommy coming back, which was really nice to see. We found out this Earth 1 version of Tommy that Oliver's obviously brought back in this universe actually was married to Earth 1 Laurel. I'm kind of good with that, because I mean I am a unapologetic Laurel shipper, so I'm kind of a bit disappointed in that regard, but I can understand why they did that, so I'm not going to complain. But I like the fact they brought him back for this episode. We got Moira back as well, but I don't really feel like they did a lot with her, especially given how much of a big deal they were, like advertising the fact that Moira was back in this episode. Susanna Thompson was back as Moira. I don't really feel like they did a lot with her. And obviously they brought back Paul Blackthorne as well, who I mentioned earlier. I liked seeing him back as well. The only thing I had with these cameos, and this kind of links back to the negatives, is while I do appreciate them, I think the way that they explained it was a little bit poor. There's a scene where they directly talk about this, and Moira says, Thea says, why couldn't Oliver bring back Robert or Earth 1 Laurel, or even Samantha, because as far as I know, Samantha's still dead. But Moira says something along the lines of, maybe Oliver could only bring back the people that didn't affect his journey towards becoming a hero, and that makes no sense, because Tommy's death in season 1 inspired Oliver not to kill. So I stuff like that, it was just a very crap piece of writing, that sequence. I honestly would have preferred it had they just not addressed it in the episode, because the explanation they gave absolutely made no sense. So it just made the situation 100 times worse. But I did like the cameos. Like I said, I just wish they were a little bit better written into the episode and under better circumstances, because I also agree that with them bringing back all these characters, it kind of does remove the stakes of the whole first 8 seasons. But then again, those events still happened, and our characters still do remember them, so they still have an impact on our characters, because obviously they all remember them because they've had their memories restored. I'm kind of 50-50 on it. I don't hate it, but I'm not completely in love with it either. But I still liked all the cameos they got back, and for the amount of people they managed to get back for this finale, still is quite incredible, because I know how hard it is to get loads and loads of actors into one scene together, especially when it's old actors who were previously on the show. So I'm quite impressed that they were able to achieve that in that area, so big praises to them. And yeah, it was just nice seeing everyone back for one last time in the series finale. Alright, and then now we get into the negatives, because unfortunately, while I did like a lot of stuff in this episode, it was not perfect, and I already said it's a good episode, but it's not a great episode, and because I did think there were quite a few issues with it. The first one I had was that, like I mentioned earlier, the way that some characters walk back lessened the show's stakes. Like I said, I just felt very mixed on this area, because I understand why they did it, but like I say, it kind of lessens that impact, because now we're seeing it in this final episode, this universe where it didn't happen, except all our characters remember it happening, but it hasn't done so in this universe that's been created. It's just very strange, and like I said, I just don't really know how to feel about it in that regard. I wish that more screen time as well was split out between other characters. I think you're inevitably going to get this problem, because obviously the show can only have an episode runtime of 42 minutes, so obviously stuff's going to get cut out. I just wish that they balance it a little bit more. Like I said, I wish we got a bit more stuff with Earth 2 Laurel and with Renee, and I'd say maybe with Moira. And I just feel like there was a bit of preference on certain characters, and I feel like with certain things that are set up for the characters, especially during like the ending montage where they show how all the characters end off towards the end of the episode, I just wish we got a few more scenes with those characters to properly establish that. But again, that's just me being a little bit of an arse in that area, because I'm just like going over the things that I would have liked to have seen. I obviously understand that there's certain things it can't do, but again, I just wish that the screen time for certain characters was just spread out a bit more evenly. And then lastly on here, I have the plot holes, because there are a lot in this episode that just don't make sense for me. Like I said, the whole thing as to why Oliver didn't bring back Earth 1 Laurel, because apparently her death was impactful for Oliver becoming the hero that he was, when, like I said, Tommy's death inspired Oliver not to kill. And yeah, it doesn't make sense. That was a stupid plot hole for me. Another one as well was the whole how they use Mia in the episode, because when they pull Mia out from the future to come and be a part in the current day events, she's already experienced the events that have happened in the episode prior, which was the backdoor pilot for the Green Arrow and the Canaries. So the timeline there is a little bit screwed up in that regard, because I don't really know how that works. I'm pretty sure it shouldn't work. Yeah, it's very confusing. It doesn't make sense. It clearly shows that the Arrow writers have no idea how to write time travel. Yeah, it's just very strange. And then the biggest one for me was, although I liked the ending scene of the episode where we have Felicity go to the afterlife to see Oliver, the scene doesn't make sense because the Monitor shows up, but as far as we know, the Monitor is dead. So how can this happen? Are we seeing this from what happened in that old reality, or is this still in the new reality and that the Monitor is somehow still alive? I don't understand. Like, does the Monitor's like previous actions, are they still intact, but that he's still like dead? I don't get it. I really don't get it. It doesn't make a lot of sense. I like the scene in of itself, but when I actually start to think about it, there are a lot of things where I'm kind of just trying to put two things together, and they're just not fitting. They're just not clicking together. So that kind of stuff, yeah, very frustrating. And I wish the episode had kind of explained that a little bit better, or maybe it even done like an alternate version of that scene. And maybe that would have made more sense, rather than just making it literally a direct answer to that final scene from season 7. So yeah, just very confused in that area. And, just thinking about all this plot hole stuff, it makes my brain hurt, so let's just skip on and get on to my final verdict for this series finale. So in terms of a final rating for this series finale, I'd probably have to give it I'd probably say a 7.5 out of 10. Like I said, I think it's a very good finale. It's not a great finale, and that's just because of the amount of niggling problems that I did have with the episode. And I think I'm probably not as disappointed as other people, like I said earlier, because I wasn't expecting some epic 10 out of 10 finale that was going to answer all the questions that I had, because I never really expected it to do so, because traditionally series finales are always seen as disappointing. So the fact that this one even managed to stick the landing as well as it did, I think is a huge testament to the writers, to the fact that they have had to end this show, that they've spent 8 years building these characters up, and to conclude them in the way that they did, I did find overall very satisfying. Again, there were a few issues along the way, but I personally enjoyed the finale. It was a good finale and a good way to end off what is, for me personally, one of the most influential comic book shows of the past decade, if not maybe of all time. It's debatable, but for me, I've loved this show, and I thought this finale just did a great job of wrapping everything up. So that is it for my review on the Arrow series finale. Again, like I said earlier, I will have a review for season 8 coming out sometime in the future. I just want to rewatch the whole season first before I actually go ahead and review the season in its entirety, because I want to refresh myself on a few things and just make sure I'm 100% with my feelings on this season before I go ahead and review it. So with that being said, I want to thank you all very much for watching this video. Please go ahead and give it a like if you are new. Subscribe to the channel if you want to know when I'm going to randomly upload my next video, because like I say, my upload schedule's been absolutely terrible for these past few months. Obviously, because I'm up here in Manchester, it's not exactly the easiest place to, find free time to obviously go ahead and record a video in a place that's not completely being drowned out by the sound of other people or other things going on. So yeah, I'll try and upload my Arrow Season 8 review as quickly as I can. Expect that sometime in the future. I'm not going to bother with the date because it will probably not come out on the date that I say in this video, so I'm just going to keep my mouth shut in that regard. But yeah, thank you for watching the video, and I hope to see you all again next time when I next make a video, whenever it goes up. Until then, goodbye.